I followed my nanny after work, and the unbelievable discovery changed everything. I will never forget that day. The sun hung low, casting eerie shadows that stretched across the pavement as I watched her walk away. My heart raced. I felt something shift in the pit of my stomach. There was a secret hidden behind her warm smile. She usually went straight home, cooking my meals, folding my clothes, sharing giggles over silly shows. But today something felt off. I trailed her through the crowded streets, clutching the strap of my bag tighter, my mind swirling with worries, doubts, and sheer curiosity. What could she be hiding? The streets buzzed with chatter, but the noise faded into a dull hum. I focused on her, my eyes darting. With each step, I felt the dampness of sweat trickle down my back. I stole glimpses of her vibrant scarf fluttering in the wind, the way she slightly glanced over her shoulder. Did she sense I was there? My pulses thudded in my ears, each beat louder than the last. I could have turned back the safe choice, but curiosity held me captive. Suddenly, she turned into a narrow alley, shrouded in shadows. I hesitated. Fear gripped me. I peeked around the corner. My breath hitched. There, illuminated by a flickering streetlight, stood two figures. They wore dark cloaks, and their faces were hidden. My heart thumped wildly, pounding against my chest as I strained to hear their conversation. Tonight, one whispered, voice low and dangerous. The plan is set. A chill shot down my spine. Plan? What kind of plan? My mind raced. Were they part of something sinister? A secret society? I couldn't think straight. I edged closer, my hands trembling. The air was thick, almost suffocating, filled with an electrical tension. The figures exchanged something shiny, a small object that glimmered even in the dim light. I squinted, trying to catch a glimpse. My heart sank like a stone. And then, my heart dropped entirely. My nanny stepped forward. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice steady, her eyes fierce with intensity. I stumbled back, the world spinning around me. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall. Each breath was shallow. She was involved. Why hadn't I seen it sooner? The warmth, the laughter, was it all a facade? I stood frozen, caught in the paradox of disbelief and dread. What had I uncovered? What was my nanny really doing? My heart ached with betrayal. I wanted to scream, to confront her, but something held me back. What if it was more dangerous than I imagined? Just then, the shadows shifted. The cloaked figures turned toward me. My breath caught. I was exposed. My mind raced as I realized the weight of my discovery. My entire world was crumbling around me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I pressed myself against the cold, coarse brick, heart racing in my chest as the cloaked figures exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing. Panic clawed at my throat. What if they recognized me? I could hardly believe my eyes. The woman who had nurtured me had suddenly transformed into a stranger harboring dark secrets. "Who's there?" One of the figures called out, their voice slicing through the tension like a knife. I wanted to bolt, to flee back home and bury myself under my blanket, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "Stay calm." My nanny's voice drifted through the alley, commanding yet unsettling. "It's just a stray cat. Nothing to worry about." Stray cat? The absurdity of her words grounded me. I wanted to scream that I was no cat, that I was a person, her charge, her companion. But the fear wrapped around me tighter, squeezing out any sound. They turned back to each other, the glimmering object still clutched in my nanny's hand. I squinted against the flickering light, desperate to define its shape. A key? A token? The possibilities slithered through my mind, each more dreadful than the last. Did it symbolize allegiance to something I could hardly comprehend? I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears as a tiny whisper of bravery flickered. I pushed myself to lean farther into the shadows, hoping they wouldn't notice my presence. I just needed to hear more. "We need to act swiftly," my nanny asserted, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "If they find out, they won't," the second figure interrupted, their tone dismissive. "The plan is in motion." We just need to stick to the schedule. Trust me, she replied, almost pleading. We've come too far to turn back. Something inside me snapped. The woman I trusted, who had brushed my tears away and comforted me during the sleepless nights, was entangled in something dark and mysterious. What could possibly hold her captive to a cause so intense that it justified secrecy and deceit? A wave of mixed emotions crashed over my betrayal, fear, and a flicker of compassion amid the turmoil. Suddenly, the shadows flickered, and for the briefest moment, my eyes met hers. My breath hitched. In that fleeting exchange, I saw vulnerability peek through her steely facade. I thought she might reach out to me, but instead, she turned away, steeling herself against the figure's "Oh, you have the materials?" One of the figures pressed out. Of course, she replied, and moments later, she produced several crumpled papers from her pocket, each one covered in scrawled notes and diagrams. I strained to catch a glimpse. The panic of being discovered now paled compared to the swirl of confusion in my mind. What on earth was happening? It felt as if the ground beneath me was being pulled away, leaving me teetering in an abyss of uncertainty. Each moment stretched in agony as I fought to comprehend the magnitude of the situation. And then, as if sensing my turmoil, my mobile phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I instinctively silenced it, my heart crashing against my ribcage. They turned toward me, suspicion climbing their dark figures like an unwelcome vine. Did you hear that? The first cloaked figure hissed that. I held my breath, paralyzed by fear, praying against hope they wouldn't find me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but to where? My entire world had shifted, and the safety of home now felt infinitely distant. My heart dropped when I saw my nanny's eyes darting toward the alley's entrance. Was she searching for me? The realization that her heart held a moment of doubt shifted the pieces of my perspective. Did she ever consider that I might uncover the truth? Was she hoping to shield me, despite her involvement in something unknown? But before I could cling to that fragile hope, my phone buzzed again, and with it came a chilling reminder that I was not alone in this. I slipped deeper into the darkness, every instinct urging me to flee, at the chaos swirling in my heart wouldn't let me. That's it, the second figure snapped. We need to find that girl. If she knows. My breath hitched, caught like a trapped bird. The risk I had taken was far greater than I imagined. My decision to follow her had turned into a desperate search for something I couldn't yet define. And in that moment, as I basked in the uncertainty that loomed above me, I realized something horrific. The stakes were much higher than I ever dreamed. I had stumbled upon a truth that could unravel everything, and I was now firmly ensnared in a web far beyond my control. Just then, the figures began to move toward the alley exit. My heart raced as I realized it was no longer safe. I couldn't breathe, the weight of revelation pressing down heavily. With one final fleeting glance back at my nanny's determined face, I made my choice. I could not turn back now. The cold brick scratched against my skin as I pressed myself further into the shadows. I could still hear the low murmurs of my nanny and the cloaked figures, words twisting around me like a snare. The alley was a labyrinth, but I fashioned it to be my sanctuary, one where I could observe without being seen. Yet, the warmth that once connected me to her had morphed into dread, and I felt the bitter taste of betrayal churning in my stomach. As the figures slipped into the night, I emerged cautiously from my hiding spot. Each step towards the light felt like crossing a chasm. I needed answers that were now tangled in the threads of my nanny's decisions. I peeked out from the alley and saw her back retreating into the distance. Her posture was unyielding, but for the first time, I noticed a slight tremor in her hands. Instinct pulled me back for just a moment. What if I confronted her? What if she explained everything? But the echoes of their conversation clawed at my resolve. The plan wasn't just a gathering of ideas. It felt dark and secretive, and I was left standing on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything that I didn't allow myself time to ponder. Instead, I turned the corner and started following her, heart thumping wildly in my chest. With every stride, the distance between us grew, but my resolve swelled. The night air was thick with the scent of rain and impending storms, and the shadows loomed larger as I lost myself in the rhythm of her footsteps ahead. She stopped suddenly outside an old, decrepit building, one I'd passed countless times without a thought, its cracked facade driven deeper by neglect. Moments later, she disappeared inside, and I stood frozen at the threshold, peering through a cracked window. Inside, the dim glow of a single bulb illuminated the room she entered. Squinting, I could just make out a gathering of figures around a wooden table. They leaned in close, studying what looked like a series of blueprints and photographs. My pulse quickened. Were they involved in something illegal? My mind raced through every possibility, each one more frightful than the last. As I was about to turn away, something a voice got my attention. The organizer spoke, and his words slithered around the air with a venomous confidence. We can't afford to lose this opportunity. The timeline has shifted, and if we don't strike now, I swallowed hard and leaned in closer. Something inside me warned that the knowledge I sought could ignite an irreversible change. Yet I pressed against the window, fixed in place by a gravity I couldn't explain. And then I saw her again, standing at the side of the table, face illuminated by the dim light. My heart twisted violently. The calm exterior I once knew was now fused with a determined glint in her eye, a fierce confidence eclipsing the warmth I once felt. That I need you to trust me, she insisted, brushing aside the murmurs from the others. The vulnerability I'd glimpsed before flickered briefly again, but it was followed by a hint of defiance. We're closer than ever. I recoiled as if she'd struck me. Trust? How could I trust her? My breaths grew shallow as I wrestled with emotions that surged like raging waters. Was she truly on my side, or was I merely a pawn in whatever game she was engaged in? As I weighed the choices before me, a swath of light lit up the alley, highlighting a figure in the shadows, a young man dressed in dark clothing with a hood pulled low over his brow. He stood just beyond the perimeter of the building, casting furtive glances up and down the street. Has she arrived? He spoke into a phone, voice low and urgent. A knot tightened in my stomach. It was clear he was waiting for someone important to this clandestine gathering. I needed to know who he was. Clenching my fists, I maneuvered around to gain a better look. The man turned slightly, and the last glimmer of light caught his face only to realize it was someone I recognized. Mark? I whispered, disbelief flooding my thoughts. Mark was one of my classmates, someone I knew only in passing, but the sight of him there sent ripples of anxiety through my veins. What was he doing here? Anxiety clawed at my insides, racing wildly. Had he discovered the same secrets I was grappling with? Or was he merely lost like I was? Before I could process the implications of this revelation, my phone buzzed again, this time with a text that illuminated the screen in the dark. I know where you are. Meet me at the fountain. I felt the ground slip beneath my feet. My heart raced in response to the unfamiliar name attached to the message. Someone out there knew I was following. Someone was offering an escape route, or perhaps tightening the noose around my fate. As I glanced back toward the building, uncertainty flooded my insides. My nanny was still inside, likely brushing against the edge of secrets meant to bury me. Would I dare follow the unknown text, or plunge deeper into the labyrinth of truths surrounding my nanny? With breaths uneven and decision looming, I stood on the precipice, a choice that could lead me further into darkness or toward a flicker of hope. The fountain was a stone's throw away from where I stood, water dancing gracefully against the night sky, shimmering like fragmented stars caught in a whirlpool. The eerie glow from my phone still lingered in my mind, the words echoing like a haunting melody. Someone knew where I was, but who? And why did their message feel more like a warning than an invitation? With one last glance at the decrepit building, shadows swallowing my nanny whole, I turned and sprinted towards the light cascading from the fountain. Each step carved deeper concern in my thoughts. Voices rose and fell like waves behind me, soldiers of my anxiety marching on, searching for a semblance of understanding in the chaos looming ahead. As I neared the fountain, the gentle rush of water filled my ears, attempting to drown out the cacophony of questions. A figure emerged from the other side, tall, with untidy hair that framed a familiar face. Mark. My heart lurched at the sight of him, a mix of relief and caution flooding my body. Wait, I blurted, taking a few hesitant steps closer, the moonlight revealing his expression an odd blend of relief and urgency. What are you doing here? His gaze shifted nervously towards the shadows behind me before locking back onto mine. I could ask you the same thing. I saw you outside that building. It's not safe. The gravity of his words anchored my fear even more. Behind the facade of normalcy our lives typically showcased, darkness simmered just below. I am why Nanish is involved in something, I admitted, adrenaline making my voice tremble. I thought I could find out what it is, but the confession hung between us, heavy and oppressive. Just as I imagined silence would swallow us, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I've been following her too. Panic twisted my stomach. You have? Why? I heard some things, he said, glancing toward the alleyway, stuff that sounded dangerous. So when I saw her leaving tonight, I knew I couldn't just let it go. As he spoke, I recognized the fear in his voice, one that mirrored my own. But beneath it, I felt something else stirring, a pulse of camaraderie born from a shared need to understand the chapter of our lives that had suddenly turned ominous. What did you hear? I asked, feeling a flicker of hope mixed with dread. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck, revealing the tension dancing beneath his skin. I overheard a conversation at school, something about a plan to, it involved us. The people who follow your nanny, they've been tracking kids. Ones they believe could be used for something. The clarity of his words cut through me like a blade. Used? A wave of disbelief crashed over me. My grandmother's face flashed in my mind, a woman who wore love and devotion like armor. How could she betray her own family? Do you think she's in danger? My voice trembled, even as the words left my lips. He shrugged, his expression a mixture of worry and contemplation. I don't know. But if we don't find out what's happening, we might find ourselves under their radar too. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the square, rustling the leaves around us like whispers of foreboding. I took a deep breath, summoning my courage. We have to go back. We have to face it together. He nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his eyes. Okay, but we have to be careful. We don't know who else might be watching. With a shared understanding, we retreated back into the darkness, the fountain's light fading behind us as we navigated the alleys like shadowy spirits. My pulse thrummed in my ears, a mixture of fear and newfound determination guiding me. Together now, we stepped deeper into the unknown, compelled by whispers of secrets that loomed larger than ourselves. The building loomed ahead, the single bulb still lighting its interior as silhouettes gathered, oblivious to the looming threat of discovery just outside. Suddenly, the door creaked open slightly. I froze, ice slicing through my veins as a figure stepped out, too familiar. Too close. It was my nanny, her expression shrouded in intent, eyes scanning the dark before stepping back inside. The door clicked shut, a barrier between us and clarity. We can't go back until we know if she's lying, Mark whispered, the tension palpable between us. Nervously biting my lip, I hesitated, weighing the peril of moving forward against the need for answers. But as we stood there, a low voice echoed from inside the room. We have to act fast. They won't wait forever. Realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. Whatever they were conspiring about, it was rapidly approaching a deadline. And I was running out of time to find the truth. Before I could share another word, a shadow darted down the alley beside us, swift and silent. My heart stopped, dread pooling at the base of my spine. Were we moments away from being discovered? Every instinct screamed at me to run. But the next moment, everything was thrown into chaos. The figure emerged from the shadows, a hood pulled low covering their face. You shouldn't have come here, the voice hissed, sharp and accusatory. Panic surged through me as two bright beams of light slashed through the darkness, illuminating the alley. We had been caught, just as my worst fears began to take shape, trapping me between choices that felt increasingly impossible. Run, Mark shouted, and as we turned to flee, the chase finally began, unraveling threads of secrets even I had yet to understand. The pounding of my heart echoed in my ears as Mark and I dashed through the maze of alleyways, urgency driving our every step. My mind raced, calculating the world spiraling around us. We could no longer rely on the innocence of a happy childhood. A darkness had unveiled itself, thrumming beneath the surface of everything I thought I knew. Where are we going? I shouted, gasping for air. Each footfall seemed to reverberate against the walls, ricocheting anxiety back into our surroundings. Just keep moving. We need to find somewhere safe. Mark's determination ignited a flicker of courage within me that we veered left, narrowly escaping the glint of headlights that swept through the alley, signaling a car's approach. I glanced back, heart sinking as I saw shadows emerge from the building, the figures in pursuit. My breath caught. These shadows weren't the ghosts of fear I had once imagined. They were real and terrifying. Somewhere deep inside, questions loomed heavier than ever. What were they so desperate to protect? What had my nanny been wrapped up in? And why was I suddenly thrust into the heart of all this danger? Mark suddenly halted, catching his breath against the graffiti-laden wall. Over here, he whispered urgently, pulling me behind a stack of old crates barricaded against the alley's end. As we crouched in the dimly lit nook, I stole a glance at him. The urgency etched on his face mirrored my own turmoil. We can't stay here. They'll find us, I murmured, voice trembling. Just wait a second, he insisted, breathing heavily, his dark eyes scanning the alley as if willing the chaos behind us to subside. Stay quiet. We huddled in silence, the pulse of fear vibrating through the air. My thoughts drifted to my nanny, the woman who had been my sanctuary against the storms of adolescence. Was she really wrapped in something so sinister? The thought shivered through me, an icicle of betrayal piercing my heart. Our moment of stillness shattered when two figures rounded the corner. I barely stifled a gasp as I realized one was my nanny, her expression wary, with shadows clinging to her like a cloak. The other figure had a presence that felt ominous, even from a distance. He was tall, bald-headed, with a permanent scowl etched onto his features. It's too risky, my nanny said, voice low. They can't find out what we're planning. But they're getting closer. We only have a short window, and if we don't act fast, the man replied, frustration belying his concern. I felt the bile rise in my throat. What were they planning? I wanted to leap out from our hiding place, to confront her, to demand answers. But fear paralyzed me. The truth hung like a noose, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, the man leaned in closer to my nanny, murmuring something too low for me to catch. The tension of the moment cracked against the backdrop of muted urgency, and dread clung to my thoughts. I had never seen her like this, so tormented, so afraid. As they turned away to head back inside, Mark pulled me deeper into our sanctuary, his expression resolute. We need to follow them. We can't just sit here. But what if they see us? I whispered, fear creeping up my spine. I don't care. We have to know. We're already in this, he replied, resolute. His determination was contagious. Although fear still gnawed at the edges of my mind, we crept to the back entrance, where a faint light flickered. I could hear their hushed conversation, the urgency palpable. Tonight's the night, the man said, voice dripping with resolve. We'll take them all, and nobody will see it coming. I felt the shock of his words reverberate within me, and a chill swept down my spine. Take us? It was an incomprehensible fear, the idea that there might be something worse than even death. He was talking about us, Mark and me. We had stumbled into something unfathomable and twisted, and now escape seemed impossible. Mark gently tugged my hand, pulling me closer to the door. We can do this. We can find proof of what they're doing. With a nod of reluctant agreement, we crouched beneath the window, eyes straining against the murky light. Filtering through, the shadows of their silhouettes swayed as they began to draw plans, oblivious to the two lives that hung delicately in the balance just outside. But our luck was growing thin, the air electric with tension. Just as I leaned in closer, trying to decipher their words, a sudden crash from further down the alley jolted me upright. The sound thundered like an alarm bell, leaving us paralyzed in a decision that felt monumental. That we need to move. They'll find us, Mark hissed, gripping my arm tightly, but I could see the uncertainty mirrored in his eyes, much like mine. Suddenly, a sharp voice pierced through the tension. I know you're out there, it bellowed, sending a cascade of terror down my spine. The unmistakable sound of footsteps approached, heavy and deliberate. I exchanged a panicked glance with Mark, and in that instant, I saw the realization that we were out of time. Running was no longer just an option. It was the only choice left to keep our truth and our lives intact. As I readied to bolt, a thought struck me like a wave. What if this horror wasn't just about protecting us? What if it was a cover for something bigger, something that could shake the very foundations of the lives we knew? The footsteps grew closer. Shadows loomed ahead and behind. With an adrenaline surge, I turned to Mark. We have to go now. But just before we could spring into action, a sharp gasp pierced the darkness. There you are? The voice was chillingly familiar. My heart dropped. It was my nanny's voice, and she had seen us. Everything hung in the air, suspended in the dread of that moment, illuminating the path of chaos before us. The only certainty was the deep, spiking fear that terror waited just beyond our fingertips, ready to envelop us in secrets darker than I had ever imagined. The world seemed to compress in that instant, the air thickening with a charged silence that rang in my ears. My nanny's eyes reflecting a blend of heartbreak and resolve locked onto mine, and in them, I searched for answers, for reassurance that this was all a misunderstanding. "Lila," she breathed, stepping closer, urgency chasing away the warmth of familiarity. "You shouldn't be here. This is dangerous." I wanted to scream at her, to demand an explanation for why she had led me into darkness, but the words stuck in my throat, mingling with the panic rising in my chest. "Dangerous?" I managed to gasp, each word a futile attempt to claw back control over a spiraling situation that felt infinitely larger than myself. "What are you planning? Who is that man?" Mark's presence beside me was a rock, steadfast and unwavering, even as the storm of confusion roared through us. He remained silent but ready, steeling himself for whatever could come next. "Listen to me," she urged, her voice fierce, filled with a desperation I had never heard before. "There are things happening that you cannot understand. Please, you must trust me. I only want to protect you." The sincerity in her voice tugged at the corners of my resolve. I had crowned her my protector for so long, the anchor who tethered me to my childhood. Could she still be that person amidst this turmoil? Was she warning me? Or was this all part of a larger treachery? "What do you mean, protect us?" I pressed, intently searching her gaze as if it could unveil hidden truths. "Protect us from what?" Before she could answer, the bald man's voice cut through the haze, punctuating the air with authority. "Enough. We don't have time for this. We need to move, now?" The urgency in his tone sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt a cacophony of adrenaline-laden fear washing over me. The weight of impending decisions pressed heavily upon us. Our futures were a delicate thread in a vastly unraveling tapestry, one I desperately yearned to understand. And then, as if the universe was conspiring against all attempts to find clarity, a sudden shrill scream sliced through the alley, followed by a chaotic rush of feet pounding against the cobblestones. My heart leapt into my throat as figures burst from the shadows, determined and unrelenting. "Run," Mark shouted, grasping my hand securely in his, and before I could process anything further, we were off, propelled by a primal instinct to survive. The thrill of fear propelled us forward, swiftly weaving through the thickened shadows of the alley that we darted past unsuspecting bystanders oblivious to the storm unfurling right beside them. My breath came in ragged bursts, and my mind raced at the speed of our escape. Even through the chaos, a burning question spiraled in circles within Meth Man's words echoed ominously. "Take them." What did that mean for us? We didn't look back as we fled, signs of the city morphing into a dizzying blur. The metallic scent of fear tinged the air as we stumbled into a narrower passageway, one that felt covert, hidden from the world above. As we rounded the corner, the footfalls behind us receded momentarily, allowing us a breath of hope, however fleeting. My heart raced against the backdrop of my thoughts. "What was that?" I panted, glancing at Mark with urgency, searching for some fragment of solace within the habitually calm depths of his eyes. "That I don't know," he admitted, his voice low and tense. "But we need to keep moving. There's a safe house nearby." Safe house. The very word seemed hopeful, yet fraught with skepticism. My life had become riddled with fractures, and now I was expected to trust one more shaky thread of stability. Yet the grit in his voice held me anchored, even as uncertainty threatened to pull me under. As we continued through the winding streets, I couldn't shake off the feeling that our flight had unveiled more than just danger. The chaos was a mirror reflecting a deeper confusion within a realization that my entire worldview was beginning to shatter. Eventually, we found ourselves in front of a derelict storefront, the windows shrouded in darkness, the heavy air thick with secrets. Mark took a deep breath. "This is it. Just trust me." That we stepped through the fragile barrier of the creaking door, the musty scent of memories thick in the air. The interior was dimly lit, revealing a solitary figure seated at a table, her back turned to us. "Mark," She greeted him without turning around, but there was a familiar cadence to her voice, a distant echo I couldn't quite place. "Lila, wait here," Mark instructed with resolve, his gaze shifting cautiously to the woman. Something in his demeanor shifted, a protective instinct emanating from him like a shield. I stepped back, pulse quickening as I crossed my arms. There was an unspoken tension that crackled between thema complexity hidden in the language of their familiarity. "What's going on?" I whispered, barely able to restrain the whirlwind of curiosity mixed with fear that rapidly churned inside me. The woman finally turned, and my world came crashing down around me. The feature's soft eyes, familiar smile were unmistakable. "Lila, darling," my mother said, her voice a haunting melody that coiled around my soul. "I didn't want you to find out this way." The truths I had been desperately seeking were now laid bare before me. Yet with them came a gut-wrenching tumult of emotions. Hope shimmered within the depths of dread, and I felt the walls closing in as my heart ached. Everything was unraveling, and all I could do was brace myself against the tremors of discovery, poised on the precipice of understanding that felt more like a distributed fracture. Why? The question escaped me, fragile and trembling, a plea for answers from the woman I thought I'd lost forever. Just as the shadows of the past loomed large, the storm of complications rolled in, and I felt the tremors of a hidden truth echoing through the air, vibrating against the very fabric of my existence. I stood, heart racing, caught between the rising tides of fear and hope, ready to plunge deeper into a labyrinth where everything I thought I knew began to warp and transform. The room spun, an oppressive whirlpool of emotions that threatened to drown me in confusion. My mother, alive and real, stood mere feet away, her expression a flickering light guiding me through the darkness. Yet, the shadows of the past loomed large, hot and suffocating as I fought to grip the edges of reality. "Why?" I managed again, my voice trembling like a leaf caught in a gale. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in, the air thick with unspoken words and burdens too heavy to carry alone. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words tangled in the air, never quite reaching me. Instead, it was Mark's firm presence beside me that held the weight of the moment, amplifying the turbulence rippling through my heart. His silent support bolstered my courage as I stared into the familiar, yet foreign eyes of the woman I desperately wanted to understand. "Lila," as she began, her voice breaking, each word unspooled from a deep reservoir of sorrow. "I had to protect you. If you knew what could be so dangerous that you'd leave me in the dark, I deserve to know." The anger bubbled up, fueled by the ache of being cast aside, a feeling like a leaf blown away, forgotten in the wind. My mother flinched, and in that moment, it was as if the weight of my own pain pressed against her shoulders. "Trust me, sweetheart, I only wanted to keep you safe from a world filled with shadows, with secrets that could destroy everything we know, everything we are. But why now?" Mark's voice was steady. "Why reveal yourself at a time like this?" She locked her gaze on him, a mixture of resolve and fear clouding her features. "Because they're closer than we thought. I didn't want to endanger you until I was certain." "What do you mean, closer?" My heart seized, each word barbed and heavy. The flickering light of hope began to dim, plunged into the darkness of uncertainty that a fleeting moment of silence fell upon us. And then, the door creaked open behind us, sending another wave of tension crashing into the room. I turned sharply, bracing against the instinct to bolt. Another figure stepped through, their silhouette framed by the dim light like an apparition. "Lila, they know," the newcomer stated bluntly, his voice a low rumble that sent chills skittering down my spine. "We don't have time. We need to leave now." Panic surged within me, hot and consuming, merging with my mounting frustration. "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "Your mother's ally," the man replied indifferently, his icy demeanor contrasting sharply with the desperate pulse pounding in my ears. "And we're running out of options. We're not safe here." "Safe?" The word echoed in the small confines of my mind, a paradox spinning in the back of my thoughts. This was supposed to be a safe house. Mark stepped forward protectively, positioning himself between me and the man, instinctively shielding me from the encroaching sense of danger. "What do you want from us? Why can't you say anything without a dozen layers of fear cloaking the truth?" "There isn't time," the man shot back, his patience clearly wearing thin. You have to trust me. If they find you here, it will be too late, too late. The words struck me with a visceral force, unraveling long-buried memories. Is this about the man in the alley? I asked, trying to ground myself amid the whirlwind. What does he want? My mother stepped forward, her face pale and taut. It's complicated, Lila. He is a part of this hidden world, a world full of danger because of what I did. A world from which I thought I could protect you. Protect me? I echoed incredulously. You pushed me into the shadows, into a life where I didn't even know the truth. Tears welled up in my mother's eyes as she fought the howling emotions swirling around us. I never wanted that for you. But there are things I can't explain, even now. The choices I made were meant to shield you, and then, like thunder rumbling ominously overhead, the tension shifted. The sound of footsteps echoed outside, a cacophony of voices approaching. The man's eyes flared with urgency, his focus darting toward the door. We have to go now. It's too late. My heart raced, caught in a transient dance of impending fear and chaotic curiosity. You can't just leave. I need to understand who they are, what's happening to our lives. The words spilled from me, a desperate plea against the whirlpool threatening to pull me under. I promise, Lila. Well, explain everything, my mother pleaded, her gaze filled with a storm of emotions swirling behind her forced calm. But first, we need to escape this before it finds us. And just like that, the last thread of certainty snapped. A cold fear gripped my heart as I instinctively turned toward the door, just in time to see a flurry of shadows materialize, figures merging and converging beyond our sanctuary. Run! Mark shouted again, his voice a desperate command, and I felt his hand grab mine with fierce intensity as we took off. The door bursting open before us that I in that moment. I knew I was about to plunge into a labyrinth where every answer could lead to another question. A world that opened up beneath my feet without mercy. A path that could lead anywhere and nowhere all at once. And the only truth I could cling to was wrapped in the widening spiral of chaos surrounding us. As we dashed into the night, heart pounding and breaths mingled with panic, an unshakable sensation tightened around my chest. I knew there were answers hidden in the darkness, waiting just around the corner. The revelation was close, yet it was nothing compared to the lurking danger that thrummed just behind us, ever closer. I looked back just in time to glimpse a shadow, a figure emerging from the depths of the alley, familiar yet ominous, a realization dawning that could change everything I thought I knew. The city hummed a low, restless undertone as we fled, each heartbeat syncing with the pounding of footsteps behind us. I could barely feel the chill of the air as it rushed past my skin, the adrenaline boiling in my veins like a wildfire. Mark's grip was steadfast, anchoring me even as uncertainty clawed at my thoughts. Where are we going? I gasped, trying to match my pace with his. But the night felt alive with shadows, each corner threatening to swallow us whole. Anywhere but here, he replied breathlessly, his eyes darting around us, scanning the streets as if danger were lurking in every alleyway. We need to find a place to regroup, to figure things out. We turned sharply down a narrow street, the shadows stretching long and ominous, looming like specters against the crumbling walls. My thoughts spun as I recalled the looming figure I had seen just moments ago. Who was it? Was it someone I knew? A dread blossomed deep in my chest, tendrils of fear entwining with every stride we took. Lila, stay close, Mark urged, subtly increasing his pace as we rounded another corner. The city was void of people at this hour, leaving only the sound of our hurried footsteps echoing in the silence, a heartbeat against the vastness of night. Did you see who it was? No, I stammered, though the memory of the figure haunted me, insistent and sharp. Somehow, I felt tethered to it, as if the very threads of our fates were interwoven. But they seemed familiar. Familiar how? Mark probed, urgency sparking in his tone. I don't know, I admitted, frustration boiling within me. Like I should know them, but I can't place it. We stumbled into a patch of dim light, the flickering of a street lamp illuminating a small park. The trees rustled above us, their branches swaying like fingers beckoning from the darkness. Mark halted, pulling me close behind a bench. He glanced around, his expression fractured between resolve and anxiety. We need to think, he said, a determined edge to his voice. What do we know? I closed my eyes, forcing against the tumult swirling through my mind. Memories cascaded, a family photo where a shadow loomed in the background, a conversation overheard, fragments of past fears. "It's about her, isn't it?" I whispered, the truth sinking in deeper. "About my mother and her secrets." Mark nodded, his brow furrowed. "She must have kept something from you, something vital." "But what?" A sudden rustle drew our attention upward, and we both froze. Whispers slithered through the air, words indistinct yet charged with emotion. My heart leapt in my chest as I strained to hear. "Shall come to us when the time is right, must keep her safe. Who is that?" I breathed, pressing my back against the bench to conceal ourselves. My pulse thumped wildly at the edge of hope stitched with fear. It was like peering into a fissured world, about to tumble into chaos yet longing for clarity. From behind a tree, a figure emerged, a woman in a dark coat, her silhouette framed by the streetlight. She hesitated, and then, as if sensing our unease, she called softly, "Lila." I squinted at her, my breath catching in my throat like an arrow mid-flight. "Do I know you?" Mark tensed beside me, prepared for flight, but I was rooted in place by the crystalline clarity of the woman's voice. There was a resonance within it, a familiarity that cut through the haze of fear weaving around my mind. "Wait," I pleaded, stepping forward, though every instinct screamed against it. "Please tell me who you are." "I was with your mother before she..." The woman hesitated, visibly grappling with the weight of her words. "Before she left. I'm here to help, I promise." "Help?" I echoed, bitterness mixing with my desperation. "How can I trust you when everything feels like a lie? What else are you hiding?" The woman stepped closer, her voice lowering. "The truths you seek are darker than you can fathom, Lila. There's a reason for the shadows that pursue you, and your mother is at the center of it all." "Then tell me," I demanded, the urgency within me swelling to a crest, a wave ready to break. "I need to know. I need to understand." Mark's grasp tightened around my wrist, a gentle reminder of where I was and who I was with. "There isn't much time," the woman urged, glancing over her shoulder apprehensively. "They are searching for you." Anguish and curiosity twisted within me. "Searching for what?" "Your mother's secret." The woman's dark eyes locked onto mine, a mixture of compassion and foreboding flickering within them. "It's more powerful than you can imagine, and it connects you all. They believe you hold the key." A chill raced through me, cutting sharper than any blade. A combination of dread and yearning converged, binding me in place with no direction but forward, into the unknown. "What key?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Before she could respond, a figure loomed behind her, dark and hulking, eyes gleaming like shards of glass in the night. "That's enough," he barked, and the air crackled with tension. "Run," Mark shouted again, panic coursing through him as he yanked my arm. But I couldn't tear my gaze away from the woman standing resolute, eyes flickering between determination and terror. "Get out of here," she shouted over her shoulder, urgency spilling from her lips like a torrent. "They'll hold them off. You must find the old book, your mother's journal. It's hidden where no one would look." "No," I cried, instinctively reaching for her, but Mark tightened his grip. "Lila, we can't." But then, chaos erupted, a flurry of shouts and footsteps scrambling in the darkness. The cold grip of fear clenched at my chest as I felt time slip away, decisions looming larger than the night itself. I was swept into Mark's protective arms, the weight of the woman's last words hanging in the air. "I must find the journal." But dread gripped me like a vice, and as we plunged back into the night, leaving behind a potential ally, the realization that my past was intertwined with a web of danger became glaringly clear. The shadows loomed heavier now, and as we ran, my mind buzzed with questions. What secrets lay in the pages of that journal? And would I be strong enough to face them when the time came? Each step felt pivotal, leading us to the threshold of a revelation that could unravel everything I knew, or worst, trap me in a fate I couldn't escape. The cold air stung my lungs as we dashed through the winding streets, Mark's steady pace and the growing distance from the chaos behind us offering a sliver of safety. Yet, with each stride, anxiety gnawed at my insides, the woman's words echoing like a haunting melody in my mind. "Find the old book, your mother's journal." "Where do we go now?" I panted, desperately wishing for clarity. It felt like the night was closing in, an impenetrable veil where answers hid just beyond reach. Mark's eyes flickered with indecision as he slowed to a halt in a darkened alley. Moments of silence punctuated only by our heavy breathing. We need to lay low for a bit. There's no point in running without a plan. I nodded, the pros and cons of following the woman's advice warring in my head. But we can't just sit here. The journal could lead us to some kind of truth, or at least a hint of what's going on. He frowned, the concern in his eyes a comforting anchor, but uncertainty baptized the air between us. Then we need a safe place to regroup. We can't risk getting caught. Let's head to that old cafe near the square. Tim always has my back. Trust, however precarious, flickered within me. If we stay in the shadows, we might just make it. The streets felt foreign now, a labyrinth of fears that haunted every shadow. As we slipped through the darkness, I caught the faint glimmer of hope at the edges of my mind. Maybe the cafe would offer more than refuge. It could also be a bridge to answers lost to time. When we finally arrived, the dimly lit sign flickering overhead felt like an outdated promise. Surrounded by tall buildings, the cafe stood like a sentinel against the night, a thin veil of warmth spilling through its windows. I could see Tim amidst the familiar chaos, his gentle hands crafting another coffee, laughter bouncing around as the few late-night patrons shared whispered secrets. As we entered, the bell over the door chimed hesitantly, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee enveloped me like a long-lost embrace. Relief swept over me, but it didn't last long. The memory of the looming figure and the woman's plea loomed like a black cloud. Tim's face lit up with recognition, instantly transforming into worry as he caught sight of us. "Mark, Lila, what happened?" His voice was a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "That we need to talk," Mark replied, urgency pressing against every syllable. "Backroom." Tim nodded, leading us towards a narrow hallway. I noticed a couple of regulars glance our way, concern shadowed in their eyes. What had we stumbled into, and what were we running from? Once inside the cramped back room, Mark shut the door, blocking out the outside world. My heart raced as Tim's brow furrowed. "Are you in trouble?" "We're being hunted," I said, tapping into the heavy weight of the truth. "And it might be connected to my mother." Tim's expression shifted, forming a mix of sympathy and caution. "I can't imagine what you're going through. But whatever it is, you're safe. Hurry, at least for now." A moment of quiet solidarity hung between us. It was a small sanctuary amidst a storm, and I clung to it as I explained everything: the woman in the park, the journal, the shadows looming ever closer. Tim exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair as he processed my words. "Your mother was always secretive about her past. I thought there were just personal reasons, but if she was involved in something dangerous," Mark interjected, "we need that journal. If there's a chance it can shed light on what's happening, we can't waste another moment." Tim nodded gravely, resolve settling into the corners of the room. "I might know a way to find it. There's an old bookstore on the outskirts of town that your mother used to frequent. Very few people know about it." Hope blossomed within me, buoyed by the idea that we could unravel the threads of deceit and danger, finally grasping a piece of my forgotten past. But just as I felt a flicker of courage igniting, a noise sharp as glass shattered that delicate momentum. Insistent banging echoed from the front of the cafe, followed by shouts. "Tim, open up." The voice was familiar and cold, a presence I hadn't expected to haunt me. Mark stood stiff beside me, eyes wide with panic. "Lila, we have to get out of here. Now." "Wait," I hissed, resisting the instinct to flee. I had to know. "Who is it?" Tim's face drained of color, the reality dawning on him as he glanced at the door. "It's the investigators. They're here for you." The cold fingers of despair wrapped around my heart. It was real now, cold, hard, and closing fast. The investigators? Why would they be looking for me? "I don't know," Tim said, urgency drawing lines on his forehead. "But whatever it is, they're relentless." Mark gripped my hand, his eyes blazing with protectiveness. "We need to make a choice: stay and risk everything, or take our chances out there." Fear enveloped me like a cloak, the weight of the unknown pressing against my ribcage. As footsteps echoed outside, the decision spiraled around me, impossibly heavy. The only hope in that moment was the truth I'd been searching for, tangled in the dark corners of my mother's life, waiting for me to discover. And just as I steeled myself to make a choice, the door creaked ominously, and from the shadows, a figure emerged, an unexpected ally with a face I thought I would never see again. My breath caught as realization struck. This was someone who held a secret I needed, and my past was about to confront me again in the most unimaginable way. I could hardly catch my breath as the figure stepped into the dim light of the room, the familiar outline emerging from the shadows. It was my father, the very man I had believed to be lost forever. Hope surged before crashing into the depths of my uncertainty. "Lila?" His voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and urgency, grounding me even as it spun my world into chaos. "I've been searching for you, Dad." The word choked out like a lifeline, pulling me from the whirlpool of confusion. It felt like a dream, one I had waited for and feared for so long. How are you here?" He stepped closer, his eyes reflecting an empathy that pierced through the walls I had built. "I don't have much time, but I heard about what's happening, about the investigators. They're looking for you, and if they find you," his voice faltered, the weight of unspoken dangers hanging thick in the air. The loud bangs on the front door reverberated through the cafe, breaking the fragile moment. "Open up," came the chilling shout. Fear clawed at my throat as I fought to keep my composure. The investigators were closing in, and the look in my father's eyes spoke of danger far greater than I had anticipated. "Lila, you need to trust me," he urged, glancing at Tim and Mark, the unspoken connection between us feeling strong. He was a stranger and yet deeply familiar. "They're after a secret tied to your mother, and it runs deeper than you know." Mark's fingers clenched around mine, sensing the weight of the danger that loomed ahead. "What secret?" he pressed, voice hushed but urgent. My father's expression darkened, a shadow passing over his face. "A power she possesses, one that was hidden to protect you, a legacy too great to grasp fully at your age. They believe it's within you." "Within me?" My heart raced, confusion swirling into panic. Pieces of a larger puzzle loomed, but remained out of reach. "What are you talking about?" "Lila, listen, this is hard for me to explain, but your mother was involved in something vast, something that threatened to unravel everything. I believe she had buried it when I was gone." His eyes locked on mine, desperation breaking through. "They want it, and they'll stop at nothing to obtain it." The noise at the door grew more aggressive, echoing like an ominous drumbeat. "What exactly do they want?" My voice trembled as dread wrapped around my insides like a vice. Could the investigators want me for a power I didn't even understand? "They want control," he replied firmly. "Control over the legacy, the knowledge contained in her journal. If they find it, they can exploit it and twist it into something unrecognizable. Then we have to get it first." My heart raced as the clarity cut through the chaos momentarily. I needed to uncover the truth not only for myself, but for the shadows that threatened my family. "Where is it?" Before my father could respond, the door shuddered violently, making us jump. The investigators were right outside, desperation and danger colliding in the air as we faced the encroaching shadows. My father's voice dropped to a whisper, a tense urgency woven within. "You all must leave. They'll hold them off. You need to find that journal before they catch up with you. No." Panic threatened to swallow me whole. "I can't leave you here. We don't have time to argue. They're already searching. It's a matter of moments before they breach this door." He stepped closer, capturing my gaze with an intensity that sent shivers racing down my spine. "I have to protect you. This is my chance to make things right." Tears pricked at my eyes, the ferocity of the moment cracking through every emotion I had pinned up. But deep down I understood. This was larger than any one of us. It was a fight for hidden truths and a future that held endless possibilities and threats. Reluctantly, I turned back to Mark, determination igniting a fire within. "We can't lose this opportunity. We have to go now." "Lila," Mark said, uncertainty coursing through his tone. "Now," I affirmed, my heart racing as we shared one last fleeting glance, an unspoken promise that we would come back for him. I in that heartbeat of decision. The door slammed open, a blast of cold air and darkness flooding into the room. There they are. The investigators surged forward, menacing and relentless. I took Mark's hand, and we dashed toward the back exit, adrenaline propelling us forward as shouts echoed behind us. We burst through the narrow doorway into an adjacent alleyway, the cold night air hitting my skin like a slap. My heart pounded as we fled, weaving through the labyrinth of the city, adrenaline ablaze within me. Where to? Mark shouted as we sprinted through the winding streets. My mind raced to the bookstore my father had mentioned, the last piece of our jigsaw puzzle that could lead us to the answers we desperately sought. To the bookstore. I shouted back, leading the way. It's where she kept the journal hidden. With every step, I felt the burden of incredible weight behind meth sunshine, dreams of my past twisted into shadows of conflict. Yet, there was something almost liberating about confronting the truth head-on, ready to carve my path through the darkness of my past. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached the bookstore. Its weathered facade might have seemed forgotten, but tonight, it stood as a beacon of unwavering hope. "This is it," I exclaimed, my heart seizing at the thought of unveiling the hidden powers that lay within my mother's words, carving out a future that could twist the tide. As we slipped past the door, a wave of nostalgia washed over me, dust motes dancing in the sliver of moonlight illuminating the cluttered shelves. My heart raced, driven not only by a need for safety, but the anticipation of secrets woven within those pages. As we maneuvered through the narrow aisles, the air thick with whispers of stories long untouched, a thought fluttered at the back of my mind. Would this journal reveal not only my mother's secrets but the breath of forgiveness I had longed for? I had spent so long ensnared in anger and fear. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to rekindle a bond one thought forever lost. Where would she keep it? Mark whispered, anchoring me back into the present. I immediately thought of the cozy nook in the corner of the shop, dark and secluded, where my mother would often read. We rushed to it, each footfall echoing with urgency. The anticipation spiraled along my spine as I reached for the worn volumes lined along the shelf, fingers trembling as I scanned their spines, each one a keeper of stories and hidden truths. There it was, nestled among forgotten tomes. I pulled out an old leather-bound journal, its cover adorned with simple yet elegant engravings. "This is it," I gasped, opened it with shaking hands, and began to flip through the pages, the scent of old paper mingling with hope. Amidst the hastily written notes and faded diagrams, words unfolded like a tapestry, revealing the depths of a world I had never known, a legacy of secrets, powers, and sacrifices made for love. And there, among the ink-stained pages, I found it, a fragment of the truth linking my mother to the darkness that pursued us, a binding promise to protect our lineage at all costs. The revelations crashed over me like waves, uncovering layers of longing and fear, but beneath it all came a sense of peace, a realization that forgiveness had never been out of my reach. Just then, the heavy footsteps of our pursuers echoed through the store, shattering the sanctuary I had just begun to reclaim. "Lila," Mark's voice barely broke through my reverie, the urgency pulling me back into the moment. "We need to go." A wild plan formed within me, kindling courage igniting as we sprinted toward the rear exit. With the journal pressed tightly to my chest, I turned back for one brief moment, whispering a promise to the silent shelves they would hold my secrets safe, my mother's tears, alongside all the love that still bound us together as a family. Together, we stepped into the night, ready to face whatever awaited us. The shadows were closing in, the darkness was thickening, and our breaths mingled with anticipation, but beneath the fear surged a newfound courage born from understanding. As we dashed into the night, I felt an overwhelming sense of resolution forge within me. I had uncovered the truth, a truth that tied me to my lineage. Bathed in love and sacrifice, no longer would I be defined by shadows. And in that breathless moment, as we chose our path forward, my heart swelled with the symbolic weight of healing, a journey of acceptance that had only just begun, yet already felt like the triumph of hope against all odds. I knew now, tracing the steps of my lineage might lead down dark paths, but it was a path toward understanding, toward finally rewriting our future. And for the first time, I felt ready to embrace that journey, together with Mark, two kindred spirits standing as one against the darkness, ready to confront the uncertainties ahead. Every step echoed out, leaving the shadows behind. Forgiveness wasn't just a destination. It was the path carved beneath my feet in faith, striking out toward an unwritten tomorrow.